So for today's video, I have a returning guest, someone I spoke to a couple of years ago, and I am speaking to again today, neuroscientist Dr. Tepring Michelle Piquado. I'm going to say she's the resident neuroscientist for this channel because I just decided that she is, and also because she's one of my really good friends. So I don't think she would mind. So I've been wanting to have her back on the channel for a while, and I suddenly found a perfect opportunity because I read this article on the BBC that talked specifically about the effects on the human body of long-term space travel. And some of those effects are related to our brain. And so I thought, if only I knew a neuroscientist who I could possibly ask these questions to. Oh wait, I do. So I sent her this article and she agreed to talk about it with me. So I hope you guys enjoy the interview, and if you have any questions for her that I did not ask related to this issue, please feel free to drop your questions in the comments below. I'm pretty excited to have her back, and it's probably pretty obvious.
All right. Well, hi, Tepring. Thanks for coming back.
Thanks for having me back. I'm
Oh,
excited.
yay, good. Okay, so totally new topic this time. Not so much about the dreams, more into the space. But before we get started, can you remind people of your super fancy credentials and why we should even listen to your opinion about any of this today?
Well, I don't know if my credentials make it so you should listen to me today, but my credentials are I have an undergraduate degree in computer science from Georgetown and a master's and PhD in neuroscience from Brandeis. I did my postdoc at UC Irvine, and I also have done a fellowship in policy at the Sacramento, California State Capitol.
That is all very fancy, my friend. I'm just saying. You may not think you're fancy, but I think you're fancy. Okay, so this article that I sent to Pring was about the long-term, about what a long-term mission in space does to the human body. And obviously what I'm interested in specifically is the brain, which is why I have Pring here today. So in the article, they had a section that was specifically about neural shuffling. And so the first part of it talked about the famous NASA twin study between Mark Kelly and Scott Kelly, where Scott Kelly, an astronaut, went to space for a year, and his twin astronaut brother, Mark Kelly, stayed on Earth during this time. And they studied them both before they went and when they came back. So this is what it says. They were measuring Scott's cognitive performance when he returned. And this is what they said. With few exceptions, Scott's cognitive performance, such as mental alertness, spatial orientation, recognition of emotions, remained largely unchanged during his time in space and relative to Mark on the ground. This is important as it suggests that astronauts can maintain high levels of cognitive performance for longer durations in space. However, a more pronounced decrease in speed and accuracy was observed after he landed and persisted for 6 months. The changes observed just after landing are possibly due to re-exposure and adjustment to Earth's gravity and the busy schedule that enveloped Scott after his mission. So, in general, when they are measuring cognitive performance of these astronauts, what exactly are they measuring?
Great question. Easy answer. Thinking, learning, and remembering. That's cognitive performance.
Okay.
Thinking, learning, remembering. There are a lot of tests that test this. As I recall, I think NASA has a battery that's just like a whole bunch of tests. And I think there might be 10 different types of tests. They can try to tease out how you're doing in thinking, learning, and remembering. And so
Mm-hmm.
it might be actually thinking about spatial learning or visual memory, things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the two things we usually test is how fast do you do it? And if you do it fast, how accurate are you? So speed and accuracy. And so they identified, if you could read it back, they identified that pretty much nothing was different up in space. But then when he came back down, he had some slowing and some
Yes.
accuracy issues.
Which I'm like, what? I feel like if I was the astronaut being tested, the going into space and I'm still as accurate, I'm like, crushed it, job done. But then coming back, so that's the part. So why do you think potentially that his cognitive performance was basically unchanged going to space, but then had such trouble coming down? Because I was thinking, well, the going into space is the part where your brain is like, this is new and novel, and the returning is like, I remember this. I got this. This is my normal. And yet that was the difficulty. Like, why do you think that is?
I mean, the couple of things that come to my mind to make it more of an analogy is, if you're not an everyday athlete and you go on a weekend hike, and you go for like 3 hours, not terribly long, and you go, maybe you walk a mile an hour, and you
Hmm.
get home, and on Sunday you're sore. So you're fine that whole
Okay.
day, Saturday, but your brain is like a muscle. So it could have been a delayed reaction, like the
Oh.
but
Hmm.
also, some of the things that can change the way that we think, um, definitely in space, we're thinking about gravity or lack of gravity, also called like microgravity, right? So, there might be some things that gravity will catch up, and then when we bring you back down to Earth gravity, that changes
Hmm.
your brain, makes you
Okay.
fuzzy cognitively,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? It might be like the longer exposure. So in out of Earth's orbit, we have different types of radiation levels. So it could be that the radiation
Okay.
catches you.
Oh, it's
Um,
like the effects of it finally catching up.
yeah, sort of
Okay.
like the sleep
Okay.
delay. Like you get a lack of sleep for one day and you get 4 hours and you're not that tired the next day, but the
Hmm.
next day you don't get enough sleep and you're kind of like
Hmm.
catching up with you.
Got
But
it.
I think what is more likely to be true that they say in the article is the Earth stressors. So we have, he was doing his thing on space. He trained for it. I was doing it kind of day in, day out with very few people up there. And then when he
Hmm.
got to Earth, he probably had to drive his own car, make sure the dishwasher was working and not
Yeah, 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 yeah. Hmm.
clean, and then
Hmm.
also getting up and going to work and doing
Yeah,
all these
yeah. And all these people like inundating you with
all these
questions all the time.
people,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
making sure
yeah.
you're pressed, and like those stressors are probably just really different. And
Mm.
stress, hormones and diet and sleep and stress
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
play a role in our brain functioning. And so I want
Hmm.
like the 6 months of reacclimation was a stressful time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, you're probably right. Okay, so then there was another study that the article talks about a Russian cosmonaut that was in space for about 6 months. And they say that a study on a Russian cosmonaut who spent 169 days on the ISS in 2014 also revealed some changes to the brain itself seemed to occur while in orbit. It found that there were changes in the levels of neural connectivity in parts of the brain relating to motor function, in other words, movement, and also in the vestibular cortex. Am I saying that right? Which plays an important role in orientation, balance, and perception of our own motion. This is perhaps unsurprising given the peculiar nature of weightlessness while in space. Astronauts often have to learn how to move efficiently without gravity to anchor them to anything and to adjust to a world where there is no up or down. And I had read this other article that was talking about the training that they have to give to astronauts when they return. And I think it was through the University of Texas. And they said that if you asked a returned astronaut to stand with their eyes closed in the early post-landing phase, they have difficulty keeping their balance when the visual input is taken away because their inner ear and cerebellum, both of which rely on gravity for inputs and normally assist the eyes with balance and coordination and orientation, haven't been active while in space. So I was, between the vestibular cortex and the inner ear and the cerebellum, there's like so many components that seem like they're not getting the inputs or they're not being used. So I don't want to say like they shut off, right? Or I mean, is that an
Good.
accurate way to say? Okay, so it's like they kind of power down and then they come back to Earth and they just power back up. Is it really that simple?
I think that if you think about it like that, that it is that simple, right?
Okay.
So like, um when we're babies, we learn how to walk, right? And so that walking function is ingrained on us with the gravity that we have here. But
Hmm.
we have some rides, like some roller coaster rides, some amusement park rides that I think it was like the vortex, and it spun you really, really, really
Yeah,
quickly, and
yeah. Hmm.
just go up and down. And then when you get off of that and you try to walk, you're a little unbalanced. So I think
Yeah.
it can be like that, but now you have 169 days, did you say?
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
that's, long, almost a
That's
whole
a long time.
school year. It's a long
Yeah.
time for your brain to like not need those functions.
Uh-huh.
And I suspect that at least for a little bit of time, you're kind of almost re learning to ride your bike again. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know
Hmm.
how to do it. You can do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Our muscles have
Hmm.
done it for so many years, but
Yeah.
the brain also, like your perception is like, I don't know how to ride a bike. I haven't ridden a bike in 3 years. But
Yeah,
then
yeah.
on it, most people reacclimate pretty
Yeah,
quickly.
yeah, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
probably something a little bit like that.
Okay.
And motion, there's just so many sensitive areas. Yeah, like the inner ear. I've heard a little bit of our feet, the way that our toes interact, like on the ground, helps
Hmm.
balancing.
Hmm.
Our eyesight
Oh,
definitely.
yeah.
So
Hmm.
then imagine we haven't, been on hard ground with that level of weight. Like it might be a little bit like getting our sea legs again after we've been like
Yeah,
rock
yeah, yeah.
for a while.
That's interesting though. I hadn't thought about that necessarily, like the your relationship between your feet and how your toes feel in relationship to balance, because obviously the visual input, yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, they're not using their feet to feel what it feels like to be balanced, right? At all. Like their feet are like dangling for the most part. Like when you see them doing those interviews on ISS, they're just
Yeah.
kind of pushing off stuff, just kind of hanging out. So
Exactly.
yeah, that's interesting. Even just
Yeah.
like having that sensory input of like your toes and your heel and the ball of your foot, like that's like, whoa, this is weird.
And maybe they'll start to think of some exercises for that balance too,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Balance
I'm sure they
ball
do.
or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, probably. Okay, so all of this sounds very, oh, the brain, amazing. We just snap back, no big deal. This is the part
Yeah.
of the article that I was like, what? So, a more recent study has raised concerns about other changes in brain structure that can occur during long-term space missions. Cavities in the brain, known as the right lateral and third ventricles, responsible for storing cerebrospinal fluid, providing nutrients to the brain and disposing of waste, can swell and take up to 3 years to shrink back to normal size. So I was like, all right, that's a little low-key terrifying. How potentially harmful is it for our brains to swell up and take 3 years to go back down? Because I feel like when people are like horribly injured, the brains swell,
Not
and
good.
3 years to go back? Like what?
Yeah, I think, yeah, brain swell bad. Right. And we have illnesses, right? Hydroencephalopathy, encephalopathy. I'm not even going to try it again.
Cephalop? I don't know. I can't do it. It's fine. I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
Yes, thank you. Hopefully everyone else does too.
yeah.
I can spell it.
Yeah.
Uh, it's when your brain swells, and oftentimes we have our brain is littler in our skull, and then in
Mhm.
between our brain and our skull, we actually have this pad,
Mhm.
PAD, pia,
Mhm.
arachnoid, and dura matter. And so when our brain swells, it pushes against those, and then if
Mm.
our brain swells horribly large, in a severe traumatic brain injury, then those get pushed and pushed. And a lot of times we actually can do some surgeries to relieve the pressure and
Yeah,
relieve
yeah, yeah.
some of that danger of it.
So bad. It's bad.
Seems bad, but we've already talked about the cognitive decline. Like it's not
Yeah.
really there, or if it is there, it's only there for a
Yeah,
couple of
yeah.
months. You get
Hmm.
back, might be even due to stress. I bet we're talking about like a gradation. So I bet it swells significantly, as in we can see a difference, like only on Earth and not in Earth
Uh-huh.
orbit, or low Earth orbit. But it's probably like a uh, it's probably a trivial amount, even though it's observable. Like it doesn't do
Okay.
anything.
So it's just like a matter of degrees, but the fact that it takes 3 years to come back down does not mean that it's because of the swelling is so huge. It just maybe it took a number of months to get there, and it's just the swelling down is just, oh, I guess what's interesting to me about it is because, right, like Scott goes up, no cognitive decline, comes back, cognitive decline. He's up there for a year. In 6 months, it seems like he's back. So it's interesting to me that someone could go up for 6 months, their brain swells, but yet it takes 3 years for the brain to come back to size. I feel like that length of time is part of what I'm like, ooh,
Wow.
ooh, you know?
Yeah, that
But maybe it's just going
I
back really slowly for
yeah,
what
it's going back
reason.
really
Okay.
slowly. I mean, I
Okay.
guess we can think about it just like muscles. Like I've been in my life a marathon runner, and it takes like 4 months for me to train, when I'm actively running to train up to a marathon distance,
Uh-huh.
22 miles, but a couple of days sitting on the couch after that race, and I'm like, oh, I can't,
Mhm.
it's a long time for me to get back to normal. And,
Yeah, yeah.
so it might be just like that, where like the cells and the vestibular areas, um, or was this the ventricles? This was the ventricles.
This was the ventricles. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they, the fluid needs to recirculate and
Hmm.
balance needs to come, and it just takes a long time to
Okay.
normal size. But again,
Hmm.
the abnormal size didn't impact the cognition or the
Okay.
motion, right? I don't think that it reported any motion issues or cognitive issues after 6 months.
Mm. Everything I've read is that it does go back. It just takes a variety of time. And obviously, like a lot of the longer term effects don't seem to be specifically about these kind of cognitive tests that they do. I guess, obviously, I think what a lot of people are looking for are things where, like, are we sort of, is there like trauma? Like, is our brain traumatized by doing this? I mean, obviously, other parts of our body, but specifically in your field. And I suppose if it goes back relatively, whether it's 6 months or 3 years, then the brain is not traumatized as far as we can tell.
I think it could still be considered injured, but
Okay. Okay. Okay.
but the question is, does it heal? Like we break a bone, we heal a bone. If we
Hmm.
inflate our brain or change the neuroplasticity and it goes back, you know,
Hmm.
is is that okay?
Hmm.
One of the questions is how many times can you do that? How many times can your brain swell and then, go back to normal 3 years later? Or, what happens if he goes up again for another 150 days within that 3-year period?
Yeah.
Then will it get stuck? I mean, at what
I don't
point?
know. Yeah.
And then does it matter? Does it
Hmm.
decrease lifespan? Does,
Yeah.
accelerate if you're at risk for Alzheimer's disease or dementia? Does it impact that?
Yeah.
These
Hmm.
long consequences that we just don't,
Yeah.
and we don't have the data. Like we're just now, sometimes accidentally, sometimes on purpose, sending scientists and astronauts out there for longer and
Huge
longer.
chunks of time. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Specifically for this
That's
reason. Well, I
relative.
guess oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's relatively new.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I guess then, I mean, as far as you would say right now, because obviously the goal for a lot of this is it will take us roughly 9 months to get to Mars, they say, plus or minus, depending on who you ask. But if people are kind of spending a year on ISS as is, then is there anything that would make you think that long-term space travel could be particularly detrimental to our brains?
I mean, 9 months is what, roughly 270 days, and we are
Hmm.
talking about 170 almost. So it's
Hmm.
100 more days.
Hmm.
But we have had some astronauts be there, like I think
Scott
400.
Kelly was there for a year. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But he was just on ISS for a year. They're talking about the 9 months to go to Mars, which I
I think
know.
that I think some of the things that I'd be worried about more than being in microgravity for a long time is we do have radiation exposure that is
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
in the
Yeah.
on Earth. And
Yeah.
going to the moon is even different radiation, going to
Yeah, yeah.
Mars, all of that. So I think, one of the things that we would have to identify is like what type of protective equipment we have for
Yeah.
radiation.
Okay,
Um,
so you'd be more nervous about the what radiation exposure on the brain over such a long time rather than issues rounding around microgravity.
I think so, at least
Okay.
from the initial reports.
Okay.
I have heard that eyeballs, like the actual muscle eyeball itself,
Hmm.
might not be great to be in space for 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah. Hmm.
And it would just be like a consequence. Like we would say, like, hey, you're most likely to lose your eyesight if we know that, or that might be
Hmm.
like in the fine print, but we'd make that big, right?
Yeah.
We
Uh-huh.
don't have that or risk of death, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and blindness and
Okay.
hypertension and slow visual speed, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's gonna be a blast, you guys. Trust us. Well, again, then I guess that begs the question, if you knew you could come back safely, would
Okay.
you go to space long term, like nine
Ooh.
months?
Oh, well, I think let's start with would I go to space?
Okay. She's like, start
I'm
small,
like
Mary.
long
Start small.
term. I think it might be even easier to say no for the long term. I'm an
Okay.
extreme extrovert, and what that means is like in COVID times, I think all of you, my friends, were like, "Oh no, T'Pring can't be staying at home alone with just like
It's
her
true.
brother,
No,
husband."
no.
We needed constantly like Zooms and calls and stuff like that. So the idea of spending space and not being able to interact with my
Oh,
friends
I see. Oh,
for nine
hilarious.
months. And isn't it 9 months there and then you do whatever you needed to do there? It's not
I
just like
mean,
touch the ground and like get back on.
yeah,
I
yes.
can't imagine being away from my friends and family and loved ones
That's super
for
funny. You're
18
like,
months.
yeah, yeah, physical risk,
Yeah.
my maybe
No.
going blind, but like my social calendar, you guys, I cannot. I cannot.
I can barely
That's
find one weekend to like do nothing and
that's
laundry and stuff like
super
that. There's
funny.
no way I would want to do that. But
Hilarious.
short term, let's say like, a 10-day holiday kind of
Okay, okay.
thing. I want to do that. Not just like the up in orbit and back, all of
Yeah,
that
yeah.
fun, but I like roller coasters too. So I would do that if it's like relatively safe. Um,
Mm-hmm.
if we get to the point where it's like an airplane ride where, yes,
Mm-hmm.
I understand that going on an airplane is not 100% safe all the time. Uh, I would consider it for my holiday.
Okay,
I mean,
good
especially
for
if
you.
someone gives it to me for free or I win it in
Yeah.
a game show.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do
Or
it.
it cost, or the cost was, not like hundreds of thousands of dollars if it was
Yeah.
like plane ride
Like,
money.
Rome, Paris,
Yeah.
orbit.
Yeah. Well, who knows? I mean, we'll see. Like in a decade or so, who knows? Maybe it will be. Oh, that would be awesome.
And
I still
especially
think
with
I,
my name, right? My name, for those of you that don't know, my name
oh
is
yeah.
Tepring, Tepring, coming from the TV show Star Trek, T apostrophe capital Pring. And she is a Vulcan woman that is betrothed to Spock. And so I feel as like, as my namesake, there is some time in my lifespan that I must go to space.
Yeah, and not only that, but like once the marketing people got hold of you, like, whew, I mean, get ready.
Let's do it. I am
Awesome.
available. If any market out
Just putting
there,
it out there, guys.
yeah.
Spring is
Oh,
available for
snap
short-term
it.
space
For
travel,
short
short
term.
term,
Yeah.
that she can squeeze into her social
Max
calendar.
14 days.
Matt. Okay, okay. I'll make sure they know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Um, well, thank you so much. This has been great. It's so much
Yeah.
fun.
It's fun to
I
talk about these things.
Yeah, I will put all of Tepring's socials in the description. So if you guys want to find her, that's where she'll be. She does amazing work. She also does a lot of amazing nonprofit work, and you can find out all of that on her variety of social medias. Thank you so much, Tepring.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to another time.